Zombies, creatures of horror movies and video games. We shudder at the thought of them, their rotting flesh and insatiable hunger, a chilling reminder of our own mortality. But what if they weren't confined to the realms of fiction? Could a zombie outbreak really happen? What would it mean for humanity? Yet, when we look at the natural world, we see examples of parasites and diseases capable of hijacking their hosts, turning them into mere puppets. Today, we'll dive into 15 shocking facts about a potential zombie apocalypse and what it would take for humanity to survive. This is not a prediction, but a glimpse into a terrifying hypothetical, a stark reminder of our own vulnerability in the face of the unknown.
Deep within the rainforests, a chilling example of parasitic manipulation unfolds. The Cordyceps fungus, a parasitic horror, preys on unsuspecting ants. Its spores infiltrate the ant's body, taking root within its very being. As the fungus grows, it consumes the ant from within, seizing control of its nervous system, transforming it into a mindless drone. The infected ant, stripped of its free will, becomes a mere puppet, marching to the rhythm of the Cordyceps' deadly symphony. It's driven to climb, ascending blades of grass, reaching for a vantage point.
Imagine a world on the brink. A world where a single bite, a scratch, or even a breath of infected air could spell doom. In the case of a zombie outbreak, the infection wouldn't be confined to a single location, slowly creeping across borders. It would explode, a wildfire in the tinderbox of our interconnected world. Air travel, once a symbol of progress, would become the very vehicle that spreads the plague. Infected individuals, unaware of the danger they carry, would board planes, their bodies ticking time bombs, the virus silently incubating within. Densely populated cities, bustling hubs of humanity, would transform into breeding grounds for the contagion.
In any disaster, the initial response is crucial, and a zombie outbreak would be no exception. The first 72 hours would be a frantic race against time, a desperate attempt to contain the uncontainable. Governments and health organizations would scramble to understand the threat, to find a cure, a vaccine, anything to stem the tide of infection. Quarantine zones might be established, borders sealed in a desperate attempt to isolate the infected. But the virus, relentless and unforgiving, would likely find ways to breach these defenses, slipping through the cracks of our best-laid plans. The global communication network, our lifeline to the outside world, would be flooded with misinformation and panic.
The image of the shambling zombie, slow and lumbering, is a staple of horror films. But what would the reality be like? Would we face a relentless horde of slow-moving corpses or something far more terrifying?
Zombie speed depends on the infection's nature and its effect on the body. Some viruses, like rabies, could lead to fast, aggressive zombies, reminiscent of World War Z.
Imagine being hunted by a predator, driven by primal hunger and unnatural rage. Alternatively, muscle rigidity could result in the classic slow-moving zombie. Chapter 5. Dust to Dust, the Decaying Horde. The undead, despite their horrifying nature, would still be subject to the laws of biology. Their bodies, no longer sustained by the processes of life, would inevitably succumb to decomposition. But how long would this gruesome process take? The answer, like many things in the natural world, is not so simple. Several factors would influence the rate of decay, turning a once familiar human form into a skeletal husk. Climate would play a crucial role. In hot, humid environments, decomposition would be rapid, the stench of decay announcing their presence long before they were seen. Chapter 6. Preparation is key, the survivalist's guide. In a world on the brink of collapse where the dead walk the earth, survival would depend on one crucial factor: preparation. Those who heed the warnings, who take steps to prepare for the unthinkable, would stand a far greater chance of weathering the storm.
The first and most crucial step would be to stockpile essential supplies, food, water, and medical necessities. Non-perishable items, those with a long shelf life, would be worth their weight in gold. Canned goods, dried foods, bottled water, these would become the currency of survival.
As the world descends into chaos, as cities become overrun, the search for safe havens would become paramount. But where could one find refuge in a world overrun by the undead? The answer lies in understanding the enemy and exploiting its weaknesses.
Zombies, driven by a primal hunger, would be drawn to areas of dense population, to the scent of living flesh. Cities, once bustling centers of commerce and culture, would become death traps, swarming with the undead.
To survive, one would need to escape the urban sprawl, to seek refuge in the vast, untamed wilderness. Remote areas far from the teeming masses would offer the best chance of survival. In a world ravaged by a zombie apocalypse, the familiar comforts of supermarkets and restaurants would be a distant memory. Gone would be the days of fast food and gourmet meals. Survival would depend on adapting to a new reality, one where sustenance came from the most unlikely of sources. Non-perishable foods, those carefully stockpiled in the days before the outbreak, would form the foundation of the post-apocalyptic diet. Canned goods, with their long shelf life, would provide essential nutrients, while dried foods like beans and rice would offer valuable calories and carbohydrates. But reliance on stockpiles wouldn't be sustainable in the long run. As the initial chaos of the outbreak subsides, as survivors establish secure settlements, attention would turn towards long-term survival. No longer could they rely solely on scavenging and hunting. The key to rebuilding civilization lay in reclaiming humanity's dominion over nature in the ancient art of agriculture.
Small-scale farming, once a quaint hobby, would become an essential skill, a means of securing a sustainable food supply. Survivors would need to learn the intricacies of cultivating crops, of nurturing seeds into life-giving sustenance.
Protected gardens, shielded from the prying eyes of the undead, would spring up within fortified settlements. The idea of a zombie apocalypse might seem like fiction, but could it ever become a reality?
A virus or parasite manipulating human behavior is plausible. Diseases like rabies alter behavior, triggering aggression.
Combine this with advancements in bioengineering and gene editing. Imagine a virus escaping containment, spreading rapidly. In a world overrun by the undead, survival wouldn't be a passive endeavor. It would demand constant vigilance, a willingness to fight for every breath, every step. Understanding the art of defense, of fortifying oneself against the relentless horde would be paramount.
The first line of defense would be shelter. Finding or creating secure locations impenetrable to the undead would be crucial. Solid structures, with reinforced doors and windows, would provide a temporary haven, a place to rest and regroup.
In a world turned upside down, where the familiar structures of society have crumbled, the instinct to isolate oneself, to trust no one, would be strong. But paradoxically, in this new reality, survival would depend on embracing the very thing that makes us human community.
Forming bonds with other survivors, creating a network of trust and mutual support, would be essential for long-term survival. A lone wolf might survive for a time, scavenging and hiding, but eventually the odds would catch up. A community, however, could share resources, divide tasks, and provide strength in numbers.
Trust, of course, would be a precious commodity, earned through shared experiences, through acts of courage and selflessness. Let's imagine for a moment that humanity prevails, that the tide of undead is stemmed, and the remnants of civilization begin to rebuild. The world that emerges from the ashes would be vastly different from the one we know, scarred by the trauma of the apocalypse. The road to recovery would be long and arduous, measured not in months or years, but in decades, perhaps even generations. Historian: the infrastructure we take for granted, the roads, the power grids, the communication networks, would lie in ruins, requiring Herculean efforts to rebuild. The very fabric of society, the institutions that once governed our lives, would need to be reimagined. Chapter 14. Eradicating the Threat, a Glimmer of Hope in the Darkness. Scientist: in the aftermath of a zombie apocalypse, with the remnants of humanity clinging to survival, the question would arise, how to eradicate the threat, to ensure such a horror never resurfaces. The answer, like the threat itself, would be complex and multifaceted. Containment would be paramount. Infected zones, those areas overrun by the undead, would need to be isolated, quarantined to prevent the spread of the contagion. This might involve establishing secure perimeters, using natural barriers like rivers and mountains to contain the threat. Scientist: within these zones, more drastic measures might be necessary. Chapter 15. Lessons from the Apocalypse. Preparedness and Resilience. While a zombie apocalypse might seem far-fetched, the lessons it imparts are real. It reminds us of our vulnerability and the fragility of our world. But it also highlights our resilience and ability to adapt. Preparedness and skills like first aid and water purification are invaluable. Zombies might just be fiction, but they teach us about human survival, resilience, and the need to prepare for the unknown. They force us to confront our deepest fears, to imagine ourselves in impossible situations, and in doing so, they reveal something profound about the human spirit, our capacity for courage, for ingenuity, for unwavering hope, even in the face of darkness. So I ask you, what would you do in a zombie apocalypse? What skills would you rely on? Who would you trust? What lengths would you go to survive? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more thought-provoking content. Until next time, stay curious, stay prepared, and most importantly, stay human.